Thanks for downloading another episode of Growing Guelph. This week I'm speaking to Colton Proveau. Colton's one half of the Brothers of Brothers Brewing. If you don't know what Brothers Brewing is, it's a really cool venue in downtown Guelph. It's personally one of my favorite places to grab a pint, see a band, do something cool, meet some friends, and talk to Colton all about establishing the brewery, some of the really interesting things that they're doing as part of a community hub, encouraging local music scenes, hosting all sorts of very neat events, including other types of events that I've talked to, people that I've talked to on this podcast, like Georgia, who started Friends of Friends. Anyway, I really enjoyed this conversation, which I had at Brothers Brewing in downtown Guelph. If there's any noise, hopefully it's not too annoying. Let me know if it is too annoying, if you do stop listening to an episode of the show because the audio is unlistenable. Let me know. Does help me improve, helps me know what to focus on when it comes to audio quality. But in any case, I hope you enjoy this conversation that I had with Colton Proveau all about Brothers Brewing, coming at you right now.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully there's no more police sirens. Oh.
Well, you can never be certain in downtown Guelph, especially with all the road stuff that they're doing. They've got a great big machine doing something out in front of the Quebec Street Mall right now.
Yeah,
and then other ones, looks like they're ready to, I don't know if they're cleaning out the water mains or something.
So I've been recording these overdubs for these fermentation videos I've been doing, and of course, the street has been under construction for like a month and a half now.
Yeah.
So most of my recordings had stuff I had to filter or compress out of them, so I know how it goes.
Are you self-taught when it comes to a lot of the multimedia things that you make use of? And social media? Yeah, same here.
YouTube's a hell of a thing.
Yeah, it's hard to have an excuse these days, right? If you have a question, if you have technical, there's so many people out there doing the same thing.
Yeah, lots of ways to learn.
All right, well, Colton, thanks so much for having me here in Brothers Brewing in downtown Guelph. If there's any audio noise that people are hearing, it's just the lively street of downtown Guelph on Wyndham Street in front of us here. I'm really excited to get into your journey and some of the cool things that you're doing here at Brothers. Thanks so much for inviting me here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to get into it and tell our story.
Colton, could you share a little bit about your personal journey and what inspired you and your brother to venture into the brewing industry?
Yeah, for sure. So my brother and I were twins. So we went to the same school growing up. We were in most of the same classes. Mm-hmm. So we were in a business class together and doing a group project with some friends on corporate social responsibility. We had to kind of pick an industry and explore how, people in that industry were dealing with corporate social responsibility. And at the time, being, seniors in high school, we were drinking our fair share of beer, so we decided to go into the brewing industry, and it kind of exposed us to craft beer in the States. So this would have been 2009, 2010. Mm-hmm. So it hadn't really blown up in Ontario yet, but in the States, they're about 10 years ahead when it comes to the beer industry. So it just exposed us to all these crazy things these companies were doing and creating fun brands around the concept of beer that were doing really artsy and rewarding things. Mm-hmm. So at the time, we had kind of grown up with music as our passion. So we wanted to go into the music industry. At the time, I was looking into being, a sound engineer, recording engineer. And just the more I looked into that industry, the less promising it was. Mm-hmm. Everybody was kind of telling me to keep it a hobby. So when we were introduced to brewing, we were like, oh, hey, let's do this. We can keep this group together. We can all kind of diversify our education, get back together and launch a brewery. My brother and I are the only ones who stuck it out, but we kind of split our education paths. So, first of all, we graduated high school, worked for a year to save up some money to be able to afford education. At the same time, Niagara College came out with their teaching brewery program, so the timing was kind of perfect. So my brother enrolled in that. I enrolled in business at Brock University, and we kind of got our education and then worked at a few other breweries in the province to get some experience before launching Brothers ourselves.
That's very cool. I know Brock University, so I grew up in the Niagara region. Brock University has a couple different courses that specialize in supporting their the winery industry and that around them. I know I went to Guelph for biology, but my mom, who's listening to this podcast, really wanted me to go into it was like a mix of you learn business and you learn like the science of viticulture and winemaking and that.
Mm-hmm.
So she tried to convince me to stay at home and go do that, but I did not. But so that was the roots of your education. Did you grow up near Brock University?
Yeah, it was maybe a 15-minute drive.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was the local option. So we knew we wanted to launch a business in some capacity. So the ability to live at home, to save money. So we actually weren't buried in student debt at the end of it was very important. So
yeah, that can be key. So then what led you to Guelph?
So the original concept, my parents still have the old family farm kind of thing down in Niagara. So originally when we launched, we were making beer at Niagara College, contract brewing it there and delivering it to craft beer bars from Niagara all the way up to Muskoka, while we kind of figured out what we wanted to do. So the original concept was to do an estate brewery on the family farm where we would grow our own ingredients. We would, grow a production brewery, get in the wine route and kind of build a business that way.
Mm-hmm.
And we just ran into a lot of regulatory problems. The wineries down there have kind of not ruined it for everybody, but like all of the governmental bodies are very careful what they allow to happen. So
right.
To do something rurally, we ran into a lot of problems. And it was just kind of after a year of trying to figure it out, we reassessed what we really wanted from the company in general. And the idea was, like, we liked beer. We weren't terribly obsessed with it. Mm-hmm. Our interest in the industry was more about using it as a medium to do other creative things. So we started looking at the concept of doing a brew pub a lot more. It would have a lot more outlets for us to express creativity and kind of create more of a community around the business rather than being a production brewery that largely depends on putting product into distribution channels. So we started looking around at places we could open that brewery that would kind of have a community that could actually support it. So we were delivering to craft beer bars across the province, one being Baker Street here in Guelph. And we had a lot of friends that went to university here. So we actually spent quite a bit of time in the city, and it was always kind of on our mind of a place that could be perfect for it. Mm-hmm. Hamilton was another spot that at the time our beer was just blowing up in, and people really wanted us to move there, but we weren't really sold on it. And then the building we ended up opening in, it was kind of always, on our minds that would be the perfect spot. And it was supposed to be demolished, and there was a Facebook group that was a petition to save it. So we actually followed that, and we followed it for a few years while we were just being a contract brewery, and then finally someone bought it. So it was more or less a shot in the dark email of like, hey, this is what we're doing. We're interested if you're interested. And, we were 22 at the time, and the landlords at the time didn't know. So we carried on this conversation through email for 3 months to keep it flowing. And then finally met in Guelph, and they were like, do you have any money to do this? Do you have any means for actually executing this? And we're like, not yet, but like we have the drive. So we spent the next couple months like really diving in, writing a business plan, finding a business partner, figuring out all the finances, and just kept the ball rolling. And 2 years later, we were opening in Guelph. So.
And that building, it's the one we're sitting in right now. It's the Petrie building, I believe is the name.
Yes.
It would be familiar to anyone who knows downtown Guelph. It's got a iconic, what do you call the front? It's like a metal...
galvanized sheet metal facade.
Yeah. And it's like a mortar and pestle because originally the building was a pharmacy of some sort.
Yes, pharmacy on the main floor. And then Petrie, the chemist who opened the pharmacy, he had an office on the second floor. And then the top floor, he was the leader of the local Masons chapter. So it was... or Masons and Oddfellows. I think it may have been both he was a part of. So that was the meeting place for his chapter.
Interesting. Well, like a lot of places in downtown Guelph, there's so much character here. And I mean, I can say that since I moved back to the city about 5 years ago, Brothers very kind of quickly caught my eye and has become probably my favorite place to just come downtown and get a drink. I think the atmosphere here, the people that are here, it's a very cool, I don't want to call it a vibe, it's a very cool vibe that you've cultivated here that I've always really liked. It feels like a very welcoming place. I know we'll get to this throughout the conversation, but you host so many different events here, and it's to me has really become what I think of as like one of the central gathering places for certain people in downtown Guelph. I don't know if you feel the same way, but are you now, like, years later? Sorry, how many years are you into it now?
We're going on 8 in June.
Yeah.
Open here. Yeah.
Does it properly feel like that amount of time?
It feels like a lifetime and a flash all at the same time, you know?
Well, I guess 2 years in, you had COVID and all of that brought with it.
Yeah, so it was
in some ways,
change.
It probably still feels like we're still in that post-COVID era of businesses and how things, how they work.
Yeah, I mean, it was, a 2-year construction project that, was a bit of a nightmare. And then we finally got our doors open, and it was like, okay, we're running this business that we have no experience running. So that was a couple years of a steep learning curve. And because of the 2-year reno, we were set back financially quite a bit. So there was a lot of stress there. Then finally, as we were getting our feet under us, COVID hit, and it was immediately like, scrap everything and completely rebuild the business in a different way. We had to depend on home deliveries, which thankfully were there. Like the Guelph community were really supportive of businesses they really cared about, and luckily, we had garnished enough local love and support to get us through. And then on the other side of it, we had the big downtown patio development, which was amazing, and in and of itself a massive change. It wasn't like going to what things were before. It was suddenly, okay, this is almost a completely different business again. And so it's constantly adapting and changing, which keeps you busy and makes the time fly by. But when I look back, I'm like, oh man, we've come so far. We've changed in so many big ways. But yeah, I mean, to your point, we're always kind of keeping the whole community hub aspect alive. That's still kind of driving everything we do. So the values behind the business haven't changed.
Well, it sounds like, the business has its roots in that corporate social responsibility class that you took. And given that you and your brother were also thinking of, you had a band, and I think learning to work within those sorts of collaborative spaces probably really prepared you for the sort of collaborative space that you've built here as well, where, like, with a band, you have to deal with different personalities and the different contributions and everyone kind of coming together to make art, right?
Yeah. In some ways, I'm sure that kind of played a role. I mean, the end goal was to build something that didn't feel like work also. So, try to have fun in as many ways as possible. Then things are always more fun when you include more people and more ideas and more, things people are bringing to the table.
It's got to also say something about you and your brother's ability to collaborate, in that you are twins who get along well enough to run a business together. I know twins who get along, but not to that degree. And is that something that, like, have you guys always just been collaborative and bringing out the best of each other in terms of a partnership?
I mean, it's had its challenges for sure. Like running a business with anybody, and then running a business with any sibling, I'm sure it's a whole other added element. But we really also enjoy including others, and I think that's been a big thing. It's like Brothers isn't about the two of us. It's really about helping to facilitate creative things within this space and just kind of let people work with us to create something that nobody could independently create. So I think that's gone a long way in helping us kind of stay centered, I guess.
Yeah. You had talked about how both you and your brother pursued different educational paths, one in business and the other in brewery management. How have those diverse backgrounds contributed to the success and the operations of Brothers Brewing today.
Yeah, it's funny. So this was like an excellent plan on paper, and sounds like, oh, you guys know how to do both of these things. But at the end of the day, education can only really teach you so much.
Mm-hmm.
So like my favorite quote about entrepreneurship is, you jump off the cliff and you build the parachute on the way down. And like, it couldn't have been any more of that. It's like I went to business school thinking it would teach me everything I needed to know. And at the end of the day, not so much.
Yeah.
My brother did the brewing school, which like certainly taught him to brew and everything, but the real learning came when we were actually doing it. So, I would never say that, I took care of all the business side of things and he took care of all the brewing side of things. Like, it was pretty, it was pretty much the both of us in every capacity. So yes, amazing story and delineation on paper, but in reality, like, paths were definitely crossed.
I guess like a lot of education, its real benefit is you learn the framework that's there, that like the limits of what there is to know, and it's not about necessarily getting here's how you run a business, here's how you set up a successful brewery, but you learn some of those foundations, you learn the extent of what's out there, and then the actual work is taking that foundation and then actually having to learn the real lessons that you need to know to run this place. And, business school couldn't have helped you manage through COVID and like all of the challenges that come with that. Or we kind of talked about this before we started recording, but downtown Guelph is set to begin a pretty new facelift of all the sidewalks out here. And there's going to be a lot of construction, and I'm sure that'll be gigantic headache for you and everyone else running businesses down here. A good reminder for listeners that during that time period, please keep coming downtown, even if it looks messy or if it's noisy down here. The businesses will rely on people, not forgetting that and coming down here. But yeah, I think it speaks to your tenacity to figure things out and get it done, and that you've, to some extent, it sounds like you successfully built the parachute. But I guess entrepreneurship is finding new cliffs to climb constantly, right?
Yeah, sort of.
With like unknown mysteries at the bottom and new things that you have to keep solving for.
Yeah, the world is an ever-changing place, so you always got to have your eye on the ball and adapt and everything. I mean, even recently, we've seen the big change of the sober curious trend and people drinking a lot less. We primarily in the early years built our business on selling beer. This is what paid for all these other things that we love to do with the space. So even this past couple years, there's been a big change in how we tackle the new reality of people consuming less and less of our revenue coming from alcohol only,
right?
But c'est la vie.
Have you explored any of the? I'm seeing more and more, and I don't know the terms for it, but the low to no to non-alcoholic beverages that companies are putting out there. Like I'm seeing more and more of those options, even at places that are selling craft beers. They'll be selling the things that, there's still the explorations of the taste and all of that, but limiting the amount of alcohol because, like you said, there's people are more and more trying to be aware of and conscious about their alcohol intake and what that means for them.
Yeah, I mean, the first few years when we were open here, our highest selling products were the ones that were like 6.7%. We even had like a 10% IPA that people couldn't get enough of. I don't think we would go through that these days if we brought it back. You look at our board now, and most things are below 4%. And we have definitely dabbled in lighter than that, especially come summer season. People are out, they're going to want another drink. We have to have something for them there that's, going to fit within their priorities. Still figuring out the non-alcoholic beer component, but we've been offering a lot of other non-alcoholic things. And I hope to dabble a bit more in other low-alcohol fermented beverages that aren't beer, but are still kind of, crafted in the fermentation way.
Speaking of that, I guess, experimentation with different types of alcohol, part of the reason we're having this conversation is that you had a video that you had posted on social media that was, I'll get you to explain it because I'm going to forget the terms, but you were kind of walking through the process of brewing a, to me, exotic looking alcoholic beverage. And I really was struck by the fact that you were doing this blend of like educational with this like the aesthetic of Brothers. Maybe speak to that a little bit, like what's the motivation there, and also explain what I did a poor job of what you were making in that video.
Sure, yeah. So kind of a side passion of mine over the years that have acquired or developed or whatever has been discovering fermented beverages in other countries and other cultures and even throughout history, kind of learning about the role alcohol has played in civilization. So through that, I've discovered just like a huge array of ferments that exist out there that don't fall into, what we were raised on. There's beer, wine, and there's spirits. There's a whole other world out there of amazing things. On my own time, I've kind of like tried traveling to places and learning about these things and recording videos of them and trying to bring them back and make batches at Brothers. Kind of like the dream would be a TV show that would be us traveling, exploring this stuff and bringing it back. This winter, I couldn't get away. Things have slowed down a bit. I think you talk to any business owner in any industry, and 2024 was a rough year. So I couldn't really justify leaving this place, but I still had these aspirations of exploring these things. So I just started making them here. Kind of every 2 weeks, I would dive in, figure out how these beverages are made, and take a stab at making them. And the response has been really cool. I mean, I've been trying to document it through these short form videos and posting them online. So then kind of people across the province started seeing them and messaging me being like, oh my God, this is like something from my home country I've never seen here. Like, are you going to keep doing this? Can I come and buy some? People in the local community that, one was Korean makgeolli. It's a sparkling Korean rice wine. Turns out a lot of people in Guelph have spent some time living and teaching in Korea, and they're all coming in being like, you need to do this constantly. So it's been really cool. I did a couple that were Himalayan beverages that were really out there. Like, I've never seen anything quite like them. One of them is called tongba, which is a fermented millet beverage where it's fermented grains, so they're still solid. So you ferment them for a few weeks. And then you put them in these special cups and pour hot water over them and drink them through a special straw that filters out the millet. So you drink it warm like tea, but it's like 5% alcohol. And really, really unique. People really loved it. And then I had some people from Nepal that had moved to Canada and opened Nepalese restaurants in Ontario, traveled to Guelph to come and try it and asked me if I could, consistently make batches that they could purchase for their restaurants and stuff. So it's been a really interesting kind of eye-opening thing that's developed that I'm trying to figure out what it means. Like, do we now go into making all of these other beverages consistently? It was meant to be like a one-off project. Every week I'll do something new, but I think there's some things that have come up that there's possibly space for Brothers expanding from being just beer, seltzer, and cider to including these other things, to include these other communities that now do very much exist around us. The beverage that I'm working on right now, it's fermenting in the back here, is called tej. It's Ethiopian honey wine. So it's like a mead, but they bitter it with this plant that you can only find in Ethiopia. There is a large Ethiopian and Eritrean population in Guelph now that are really excited that I'm making this. And even one of the Ethiopian restaurants in town reached out because they've been making it privately and they want to find some way of partnering to make sure they can serve it all the time. To me, that's super cool. I mean, we've always strived to be a community space and be as inclusive as we can. And now we're kind of able to be inclusive by making other cultures fermented drinks. And I think that's just really cool and something I'm excited to continue pursuing and showing people.
Yeah, I think that's the positive kind of not even use the word, but like when people talk about cultural appropriation in a good way, I guess it's not appropriating, like cultural exploration and sharing and bringing things to people who would never try it, and also, like you said, people who thought they would never get to drink a special drink like that from like something that they remember from when they were young, from their home country, and now you're getting to bring that back to them. That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that, these initial batches are more of a educational slant on things, discovery kind of angle. And then if there are people in the community from these areas that I can work with and scale it in a way that would benefit them, I'm thinking that would be less appropriative and more like helping community building, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like from the beginning, your roots of it are not in the let's steal from other cultures, and like there's the respect of and the education point too, right? Where you're explaining like where this comes from and what it is, and so it seems like creating a community hub was a real central goal for here at Brothers Brewing. Can you speak to why like fostering a communal space in downtown Guelph was so important to you, and how has the local community responded to those goals?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think the roots of the business were always to create something we could have fun in that didn't seem like work and that was creative. I mean, what's creativity without surrounding yourself with people that both appreciate it, but then also want to participate in some capacity in what you're trying to create? So when looking where we would open a brewery, like part of the reason we chose Guelph is because it is very much a very creative city and a very support local kind of community. I mean, a lot of people talk about supporting local. A lot of other municipalities talk about how they have so many local businesses, but like Guelph, it's very apparent. Like you look around downtown, there's not many chains of any kind. It's all, mom and pop, small businesses, and people really care about them, and they really care about each other. And I think it's part of the reason why craft beer was also, like, Guelph was one of the first cities in Ontario that really supported craft. I mean, we had Wellington, F&M, like, these are some of the OG craft breweries in the province. And, outside looking in, it was like, yeah, this is the kind of community we want to be a part of. But at the same time, we are outsiders to this community. So, like, are they going to accept us? And I think in the beginning, there was a bit of like us having to prove ourselves and our intentions. I remember when we first moved here and opened, we would hear a lot of rumors about, people thinking we came from a ton of money or had a bunch of these things, and this wasn't like our first location. When in reality, it's like, we financed this whole thing. Like, we thought we'd make a business in Niagara where we had support, but kind of wanted to do it here instead and chose to start from zero. So it took a bit, I think, for people to see that. But we were obviously here every day slaving away. People who came to check out what was going on, I think could see the authenticity and genuineness in what we were trying to achieve. And then the community events that we would host and, the local bands we would bring in, I think went a long way in kind of showing that, we want to be here for the community as well. It's not just for us to have a profitable brew pub or something. It's like we're really trying to create something that is an institution in town that kind of benefits everybody.
People can sense when there's a lack of authenticity there. And like you said, maybe there was like rumors and stuff like that. But I think once people got the chance to spend time here, then the place and the culture and what you're building speaks for itself in a lot of ways.
Yeah, thank you. We hope so.
I'm trying to remember some of the events that I've been. I came to. I'm gonna forget the name of it. It was like an art craft night here. I want to say it was lino cut, where you carve out like a rubber stamp material and you carve like a design out of it. I did a little workshop here, and that was really fun. So, like, it must be things like that. The things like the idea that you can, if you're here having a drink, you can like order Uber Eats food here. And I know sometimes you have food that your vendors and that you work with that have food in here, but it's rare to find a place that is so welcoming of building a community space and not just the maximizing of the profits. And I shouldn't say that. I know that you have to make money, and you, like any successful business, has to have that like front and center. But it seems like
you don't need to do it all, and you don't need to take it all. It's kind of our like philosophy. Like we're passionate about, the beer, crafting well-made beverages, and doing creative things in our space. Food isn't something that's a huge passion of ours. I mean, we enjoy food, we enjoy beer pairings and everything, but making food in the kitchen to present to people has never been something that we feel is kind of in our wheelhouse. Mm-hmm. But we look around downtown, and again, we're like, there's a ton of mom and pop food shops that, are takeout based, that could really benefit from having a dining room area, kind of like what we have here that we serve our beer in. Mm-hmm. So if we let them focus on what they're passionate about, and we let people bring their stuff in here, we can both kind of benefit from it. And maybe we can create a space that's better than, somebody could do individually. And then along with that is the food pop-ups. We try to host as many as we can with local food companies. A lot of them are startup companies that are just kind of dabbling into food, and we're like, okay, well, we have a room full of people. Come, like, try your recipes out in here, give them to people, sell them to make, your first little bit of seed funding, and we're happy to be a part of that. And I think all of our customers are happy to, experience it and see it. So
it's cool that you've created a place here that can be the launching pad of other people's creative endeavors, where like it's a really like people talk about gatekeeping, and the opposite of gatekeeping is like swinging the gates wide open, and that's
facilitating.
Like,
yes.
Yeah, exactly. Like you've built a place here that not only like it seems like you feel like the downtown community has welcomed you into this space to build this business and build this space, but now you're also using that as a space where it's like, okay, well, how can it benefit the nearby restaurants that don't have like all the seating that they might want to have, or like you said, the people trying to launch things, or the creative pursuits, or the artists, or the as we're sitting here and I'm kind of surrounded by all the brothers branding of it all, I'm really struck by something that I felt since like day one of walking in here, which is it feels like you guys have a really cohesive, a really strong idea of what this place wants to be, if that makes sense. Like from the like artwork, like all the artwork that you've had of all the different brews, you would say, or like
brews, brands, beers, all works.
You must like, how do you connect with these artists and to bring about, like, it feels like there's like a variety, but it's also very cohesive, if that makes sense. Like,
we do them all, like all of the branding and stuff we all do in house. So it's my brother and I, and like the variety that you see is literally like year by year having it like slowly kind of change a little bit. But the artistic outlet has been like the major driving force for us. So like all of the branding and the visual identity of the brand has been a big component of that. Like that's kind of a piece that we take for ourselves from it all. Like we make the beverages and we make the branding behind Brothers, and then everything else as far as events and programming that we kind of like help facilitate other people to do. So the physical representation and identity is kind of what we hold near and dear to us, which has been a lot of work, but I think that's kind of why it seems cohesive and so genuine, because it really is just an extension of us, what we like.
Yeah.
And
I know you have a fair number of antique furniture, frames, some like rugs and that are like up on the walls. Was a lot of this just acquired when you had the space and you knew you were going to be opening up? Like, did you just start putting word out to the communities and keeping an eye out for stuff? Or like, I'm sure every piece in here has a little story behind it, right? But
yeah, for sure. It's been a slow accumulation of things to a certain extent. I mean, when we first opened, I see pictures and I'm like, man, this was a big empty white room. But because we were so delayed in opening and so tight on funds, like we couldn't really buy anything and fill it with stuff. which has kind of led to the eclectic feel of like pieces that are, mismatched and everything. We had to build everything ourselves, so like the bar and everything we cobbled together from stuff we got on auctions. The ceiling tiles on the front and everything we had discovered in a drop ceiling of the neighboring building. Like these two buildings are adjoined, so where Osmos is, it used to have this drop ceiling, and when they tore it down, it was all these amazing ceiling tiles. So we stole those relics and incorporated them into the bar. All the shelving behind the bar is the joists that were cut out to have the elevator shaft put in, and a bunch of the antiques come from Disarray. He was an antique store that used to be beside Cornerstone. You still catch him at the night markets in town. He definitely supplied us with a lot of the stuff that's in here. We would try to get a little escape from working at the brewery and go peruse the antique store and leave with a couple items, trading him a case of beer. So
that's fun. I know. So his name's Ray, who used to run Disarrays, and I've got to speak to him on this podcast because I'm sure he's got some really interesting stories to tell. I first discovered his location in downtown Guelph that used to be here. Sorry, not here, but just down the street. Disarrays when I was a student, and it was like if you're ever someone who enjoys going into like an eclectic vintage antique store and just browsing, it was like the dream come true for something like that. And you'd pick out a bunch of fun oddity, old posters or interesting finds, and then bring him to the front, and it was very much just up to him to kind of decide in that moment what it was going to cost. And I know that's a Guelph institution that a lot of people fondly remember, and like you said, you can still find him at the ward night markets. I know there's some features that you have, like physical features, like there's someone bought you a pint on the wall, and there's a coaster sketching Hall of Fame and these kind of unique things. Where do you source some of these ideas from? Like, is it just something that as you go out in the world and visit other places, you're kind of always keeping an eye out for things to take back and incorporate here?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's always trying to think of what are things we can bring here that people haven't seen elsewhere and that will really like stick out in their mind as something that's like a nice surprise or like, something really cool they haven't seen. There's somebody bought you a pint wall. I've got to credit Silversmith Brewery down in Niagara on the Lake with that one. We stole that idea from them, but Guelph really adopted it in a huge way. Like down there, it's a little chalkboard that they have, and we started that way. And then I think within the first few hours of having it on the wall, it filled up. And then we painted an even bigger square, and it filled up. And we just had to start painting this thing bigger and bigger until it's now a considerable portion of our wall. It's kind of like the pay it forward movement. Like somebody sees their names up there, they don't want to see it come down, but they want to give that same experience of joy to 5 of their friends. So It's just kind of grown into this behemoth of a thing. That's been really neat. The coaster drawing is a really cool thing that I haven't seen anywhere else. I think we can take credit for that one. That was just kind of a funny aha moment out of sheer necessity. When we opened, we needed coasters. We couldn't get branded coasters from other businesses because we weren't selling anyone else's product. So I'm like, all right, we can't afford a production run of our own, like branded ones. Let's just buy some blank ones and people can draw on them. And then people bought into it in a big way, and we really kind of leaned into it and threw pencil crayons at every table and made a Hall of Fame out of it. And some of the art that people have drawn on these things is truly mind-blowing.
Yeah, the amount of it seems like Guelph has a bottomless well of like inspiration and talent and creativity that people just, it's like they're overjoyed to find an outlet at a place like this that is supportive and will gladly take some of their art and put it up on the wall. And it just seems like the community fosters that and creates those sorts of, I don't know if it both creates those people or if those people that are like that are drawn to here. I mean, given the fact that you and your brother ended up here, I think it's a bit of both, right? That it's a community that like magnetizes that energy in.
I would think so. I think that's why you see a lot of people either sticking here after university or leaving and then coming back. I think there's a big trend of, when people hit 30, they end up moving back to Guelph and settling down because, they haven't found anything that they've quite, resonated with as much as they do with the community here.
Yeah, that was exactly I went to school here, moved out, went to the GTA, Toronto, when I was like 22. And even when we left, my girlfriend at the time, my now wife, said like, "Oh, we'd like to come back here." And then, yeah, almost exactly as you said, we were right around turning 30, and it was like we felt the calling back to Guelph. Do you and your brother consider yourselves Guelphites yet? Now that you've been here 8 years.
Yeah, it's funny. So we've been living here 9 years now.
9 years, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like we're definitely characters in the community, but I don't know. I feel like if I call myself a Guelphite, maybe it'll make some true Guelphites upset. So
yeah,
still.
Well, I think there's you can't debate the fact of the impact that you've had. I'm sure, through both of your combined efforts, you've impacted more people in your 8-9 years of being here than some people do in a lifetime of living in the city, and that's just from pouring your creative energies, and not just creative. I think there's probably a lot of we're kind of playing up the creativity aspect of it, but no doubt a large part of this was just like old-fashioned hard work and stick-to-itiveness, right? That you've now built this place. I wanted to ask you because I know in the beginning of the conversation you spoke about America being ahead of Canada in that when it comes to the
craft beer movement in general.
Yeah, the craft beer movement So you grew up in the kind of Niagara region, similar to me, which kind of means that you end up having an interesting relationship with the States, with it being so close. Just wondering how the current climate of the tariffs and us kind of suddenly having this antagonistic relationship with our biggest trading partner and closest ally. I know it's brought up a lot of conflicting feelings in me, where it feels like all of us took for granted that we would have this lifetime for the rest of our lives partnership with this country. Does that where are you if you want to share about that, like where are you with how that feels and where things are?
I mean, like for our industry specifically, I think we're kind of independently established enough, and now the Canadian beer scene is its own thing separate from the States, that we're kind of on our own path. I mean, there's obviously some ingredients, and I mean, I'm looking at our can fridge right now, and I'm like, yes, aluminum will be affected. But apart from that, I think the Canadian beer industry will continue on its path, regardless of how our relationship with the States is. And
and I think right now there's the energy is there's a lot of emotion of like people feeling like the rug's been pulled out from under them. But I think the Canadian spirit is to sort of say, all right, things have changed, but then take that energy and put it towards coming up with our homegrown solutions for things and new ways of doing things. And I think I'm kind of excited to see like what all of that energy results in. Like even people are talking about interprovincial barriers to trade, which we're all kind of becoming more aware of that are existing. I guess as a brewery, does any of that interest you or excite you about if Canada were to become like if some of the walls between selling in between provinces were to come down? Does that provide opportunities to you, or is it just also a new set of challenges?
Yeah, I mean, it could. I mean, there are definitely big barriers with alcohol specifically moving between provinces. Some provinces are easier to sell to than others. For us, we're so hyper local, and I think that's kind of the trend in there's a bit of a reckoning in craft beer at the moment. Like sales are slowing. There's a lot of breweries closing. There's a lot of people caught in the middle of like they're not local enough to be able to be a business with just their local support. They need more, and suddenly they're in a tight spot because of that. I think our whole identity is around supporting our local community and being that cool spot that they could potentially be proud of that is unique to Guelph for them. And I feel like every city and every place should have that spot. So, should we grow into other areas? Maybe not. I mean, the idea of being available if you really want to order Brothers, online and get it shipped to another province, yes. But I don't know if we're going to really expand into other sales channels in a big way interprovincially. We haven't even really tapped into LCBO and grocery stores fully here,
Right.
because we feel like having the freshest product is kind of the best representation of what we do here. So we don't really want anything sitting on the shelf for too long, even if it's, our IPA on a shelf in Northern Ontario. Like, I don't know, better to get it closer to the source. That being said, with construction downtown and everything, we might be forced to make some certain pivots in the future if business here slows as a result of construction. So it's definitely going to be nice to have more options with less regulation.
And who knows the sort of opportunities that you kind of spoke to it earlier, but with some of these, like the one-off, like exploring things that
just
you're
other fermented beverages.
Yeah, like the other fermented beverages, and opening it up to like certain communities that, like, who knows? I know a lot of it's the trade barriers are more than just the legal ones. There's also, we're such a big country that, like you said, shipping across to various places can be a challenge, and then, like you said, there's that authenticity challenge too, which I guess to relate to like music and bands, there's often this interesting struggle where people want to see their favorite bands like be able to succeed, but then part of that success, there's the blend of like, well, are they selling out? Like if they're succeeding so much that then I hear their song in a car commercial, when, like, you know what I mean? There's that really interesting balance of like authenticity to success, and like getting your product in LCBO would be really cool, but then would that alienate or just rub some small section of your fan base the wrong way, who are now like, well, now it's not my precious cool little unknown thing.
True.
You know what I mean? Like I don't know. It's a tricky thing when it comes to homegrown support of stuff like that, where like remaining true to yourself and true to the ethos of like what you were building here. And it sounds like having both you and your brother united in that, the vision of it would go a long way to maintaining that integrity.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's enough beer consumed in Guelph. If we can take, whatever percentage of that, it'll be enough to keep us happy. And if we can like kind of grow the recognition of our brand and, what we do here in creative ways beyond that, without necessarily scaling production and availability of the product, that's kind of the ideal world. Like, we've always had a really strong digital presence. Like we launched our Instagram page and the brand of Brothers 6 months before we actually were a business. Like we were a brand of Niagara College selling, Niagara College beer, branded Brothers, and they made all the money. And I don't know, like leveraging a digital footprint or identity has kind of been the way we've done most things. So I kind of see the future for us in like continuing to leverage that, so people know what we're doing, are inspired potentially by what we're doing, set an example for other like small craft breweries elsewhere to kind of do similar things, but then mainly focus on supporting our local community and double downing on our local events and supporting people locally.
So you had talked about making a passion project and then turning it into a career and like the place that you pour everything into. Has it been a challenge to have some sort of work-life balance when you're in that space? Like, it seems like you love what you do, but is it like over 8-9 years of doing it, has it been tricky to maintain that like without getting burnt out because you're putting everything into it?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. It's definitely like we've been open here 8 years. We've been a company for 11, but my, previous 4 years of education were all dedicated to this as the end goal as well. So it's
Right.
been quite a big chunk of my life where it's like most time in any given day is thinking about, this place and this business and, what we can do with it. So like the method of not getting burnt out is just trying to find other passions and other things to incorporate into them. So like music was originally my main passion, and now we're really diving into supporting the local music scene a bit more than we have in the past. And it's kind of like, still involving this place, but finding other things to pull from it that are not stale or not that are fresh and exciting, right? Yeah.
I know I've seen a couple of musical acts here that unfortunately I can't tell you the name of them, but I can say that it's or even just walking by on a summer night or something where not happen to like not going here, but it's always, I don't know, you must enjoy that element of it of getting, like, you've built a stage and now you can invite local musicians up onto it and to see them get to build an audience and build fans and launch mini careers of their own through the community that you've built.
Yeah, the music scene in Guelph is really interesting, and it's been getting better and better every year that we've been here. There's some really talented musicians in town that live here and have always been here, but then there's the university musician element to it that I feel has just been growing and growing and growing, and we've been fortunate enough to experience kind of the like university band hype cycle over and over again of like these new bands coming out, like first, second year university. We, host a couple of their shows. They sell out, they get, really big. They're really amped about it. And then they graduate and they all need to move on with their lives. And the band breaks up at its peak. And then they go out and they do like cool, amazing projects individually. Mm-hmm. And like it's happened enough times here that we've had these like iconic bands for these like 4 years. And we've been fortunate enough to be the spot that like they've come and like prefer playing. So more recently I've started trying to record all the bands that play here and like be able to give them some footage. And I'm still working on making sure like the audio and everything is actually, a quality that they would really want to actually use. So I'm looking forward to doing more of that work to kind of support the music community here even more. One really cool event we've been doing it's going on a year now, actually, this month. We call it the Funky Jam Sandwich. It's an open jam with a focus on funk, soul, and R&B music. It happens the third Sunday of every month. Local musician Emmett Leacock, he's a drummer in a bunch of acts. He's kind of the one facilitating it. So every month he puts together a different house band of 3 or 4 musicians. They come, they do an opening set, and then the rest of the evening, if there's enough people, which there has always been to date, other musicians kind of take over and they take over the stage. And it's just been this really crazy networking event for local musicians, and just like the support from it has been amazing to see. And seeing people meet for the first time, go up, play together, and then launch bands that are doing side projects has been like really, really rewarding. And it's things like this that's like, this has nothing to do with beer or like something we were doing years ago, but it's just like a cool thing we found we've been able to do that supports the community in some way. And it's along the lines of the whole facilitating thing. Like this event is fully credited to Emmett for pulling it off every month. But it's rewarding to be able to be like, all right, we provided the space and the encouragement, and if we can, now provide even video content, like it all helps.
And you're positioned in a good place here, and for that community, which is must have been a huge. I mean, it no doubt has been a huge benefit for you, because if you were in a warehouse on the edge of town, I could imagine it would be easier to feel isolated. But being in downtown when you're brewing here, and you're also creating this space, and you're I think you said you kind of live right around the corner, so in your personal life outside of here, you see the community, you see that space, and then you're also right down the street from the tool library, from things that can help facilitate, like you were saying, like the audiovisual elements of it, like working with I don't know. There's just a lot of that energy in the downtown Guelph and just the wider Guelph area that people want to come together, collaborate, and there's a lot of people with the energy and the idea for those spaces, and then they don't have access to the space to do it. So,
yeah, it's been neat. We're kind of uniquely positioned to do this sort of work because we are not a restaurant first. Mm-hmm. So there's no dinner rush to protect. There's no like regular business to protect. Mm-hmm. Like our regular business is doing events, doing community stuff, and we have the backdrop of beer to sell during all of that. That is the actual business component of it. Mm-hmm. So it can be a lot more work, and like always having to make sure our event calendar is full of something because that's what gets people here. But it's also the diversity of what the business can be across the week, across the month, across the seasons is really enjoyable, and I think that's what people can appreciate of us, apart from just being another bar downtown. Like we do all of these other things.
So we've talked a lot about the history and a bit about like the guiding principles and what you're looking to kind of keep into the future. But looking ahead, is there anything aspirational for Brothers Brewing Company in terms of like the business growth and the community involvement that we haven't touched on that you're excited about and that kind of keeps you that you have your eye on in terms of the what's next?
Yeah, I mean it's funny, like we've been here, what was it, 8 years, and I still meet people probably on a weekly basis that are like, "Oh, are you guys new?" Like I've never been here before.
And depending on their perspective, 8-9 years could still be new, right? Depending on.
Well, true. I mean, Guelph's a big city. Downtown is its own like bubble. That a lot of people, even on the south end, they don't come down here all that often.
Yeah.
So there's still so many Guelphites that we have to reach and we have to pull here to experience it. And I think kind of continuing doing a diversity of events and catering to more and more different groups of people and including them is kind of the intent. It's looking and being like, how can we be known and appreciated by more people in the city, and how can one thing that we used to come back to all the time is making Brothers a third space. So the concept of the third space is you feel home in two places normally in your life: your home, your office, or your car. Mm-hmm. And if we can make this place feel like a living room to you, amazing. Like that's the goal. So like, how can we make more people feel comfortable enough to like come here?
This isn't the first episode that the third space as a concept has come up on, and like the classical third space was church for a lot of people. And I'm sure in a weird way, like what you've built here is a modern day church for a lot of people, right? Where it's maybe less connected to like, well, I was going to say less connected to the spirituality, but if you talk to some musicians in that, I think they're fully use like communal music creation as their connection to the spiritual, and having a place where they can come. And there obviously is the business component, but like you said, it's not a traditional restaurant. Like you don't come and sit down in here and you feel pressured by like wait staff to like, hey, get your food, get your drink, and then get out to make room for the table. So I think.
Yeah, I mean, now more and more that people are kind of stuck in their phones and in the digital world, people feel like they're missing something from their lives. And I think a huge component of that is socializing in a social space that is for that. And, you go to a restaurant, it's not necessarily that. Like you sit at the table with the people you come with.
Well, that's what you have these big, they're almost like...
communal tables.
Yeah, like I'm trying to... They remind me of when I was in Germany and Bavaria, there's they have like beer halls where they've got the long rows of tables where
Mm-hmm.
you end up just talking to people that are seated next to you because it's a communal space, and like you said, it's not about going in a little isolated bubble and completely staying within that. And I think having this style of seating and the sort of events that you have here facilitates that.
Yeah, totally. And like, it's funny, people talk about the pre-COVID world and post-COVID world still all the time. And like pre-COVID, we were such a place people would come to mingle, and like, you know, we wouldn't have to do anything. No event was required. You were coming to Brothers, you were going to bump into a ton of people. People were standing and drinking. Post-COVID, people come, they sit down, and unless we have an event to kind of facilitate the interactions and them standing or watching a band or something for them to like, you know, get behind together, it's been harder to get that kind of intermingling.
Yeah.
So it's getting a bit easier now, but it's definitely something that's been very noticeable. So I feel now more than ever, it's important for places like ours to exist and kind of like keep pushing it, because people need it. They really do. And like, you know, if we can continue making a business out of providing this type of space, I feel like that alone is doing a lot for the community and local people's sanity, if anything.
Yeah. And it's that, like you said, people need it. And they also, there's a lot of people, they're missing that third space and they don't even know it. Mm-hmm. And partially it's because they've tried to replace it with like maybe digital versions of it that check some of the boxes, but not enough. Mm-hmm. And there's like worlds of difference between spending 3 hours interacting on like a Reddit message thread where, you know, there is debate and there's conversation, but everyone's at an arm's length from each other. Everyone's behind usernames. Things can get heated very quickly because you're not really understanding the context of, you know, how people are speaking and where they're coming from. And in a communal place like this, sometimes people can have some of those more it sparks that sort of debate and conversation that people can have, because you can really understand like when someone is making a joke about something and when something isn't as serious as it can appear when it's just black and white, or even if not in a printed sense, or in a written word sense, but on social media where people record their thoughts and then share it with the world, and you can't control how people how they're taking it in and like what you're putting out there. And you probably know this as someone who is kind of working within both spaces, right? Like you're cultivating that social media side, which is almost required to run a modern day business, a modern day brand. But you're doing it within the context of the real physical communal space where like that's the goal, right? Is like people being here, spending time. And I think that's I think we're only going to see more and more of that demand, and you're able to have the venue to partner with the people who want to build those community spaces. Like I spoke to Georgia, who hosts Friends of Friends. Mm-hmm. I know that she's had events here with that, and in some ways being a university town means that like guaranteed every year there's thousands of people who are new to the city. They're also in the time of their life where they're investing in their future and they're trying to build connections and they're figuring out who they are. And yeah, I really love living in a university town like that, because I know people can complain about some of the issues that students bring with them, but like you can't, like it's really hard to replace or to beat that like energy and optimism and excitement that new crop of students bring in. And like you said, a lot of them end up setting up lives here and choosing Guelph as their home. And even if they're only here for 4 years, that's 4 years of, like you said, where you can see getting to experience those bands that might break up 2 years after they graduate, or right away after they graduate. That still doesn't take away from what they have while they're here and like the community that they build.
Yeah, I think Guelph's a great place to go to university, specifically because of the type of city it is and the type of downtown that we have. That, you know, I think it's a unique experience for a lot of university students, and if we can keep, giving them something that is genuine and facilitates, a benefit for them rather than treating them like they're just, kids down here going to the student bars.
Yeah, give us your OSAP money and get out.
Yeah. No. They breathe a life into the city that's undeniable, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And like you said, the fact that the student community, like campus, is fairly close to downtown, and it feels so well integrated with the city that some university towns, it's almost like the university is like a little village unto itself, and there's the bars that are around it, and there's the restaurants that service them and all that, but it's not like, it feels like separate. Like there's the rest of the town, and then there's the university section, and I don't think Guelph feels like that at all. I think the students come and they, integrate into the community. Mm-hmm. So for anyone listening who, is inspired by the journey, do you have any advice to offer, like aspiring brewers who are looking to kind of not just create a brewery, but create a community-centered space? Do you have any advice that you think has served you well, or the opposite is something that you wish you had known 10, 11 years ago when you were starting down this path?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just start doing something. I mean, this whole place started from a shot in the dark email. Yeah. This whole company started from just like a social media post that had no money or actual company behind it. Most of our events that have really taken off have literally been like DM messages with random people in the community, like, hey, what do you think about this? Let's give it a shot. And you never know what something's going to turn into. There's that idiom, an object in motion tends to stay in motion. So just do something, and who knows what it'll turn into.
Yeah, the momentum once you start building it. And I was thinking of this earlier in the conversation. You were talking about sending that email and how it was kind of good that it was over in email, because you yourself felt like you were very young, kind of inexperienced, but establishing that connection over email led to some like legitimacy of what you were trying to build. And I think that idea of being, people like the inferiority of what do you call it? Like people
imposter syndrome.
Exactly. Like there's that imposter syndrome when you're starting out in something, because you're so aware of the gap between where you want to be and where you are now. But from the outside, just taking a stab at things, just sending the emails, just like, and I experienced this myself in building this podcast, where the first couple of guests I talked to, I had to send an email that said like, hey, I can't point you towards an existing thing at all, but I'm hoping to do this. And it's scary doing that when you don't have that momentum yet to get the ball rolling. But once you reach out to people and you start connecting with them, they believe in your vision as long as you're passionate about it. And I'm sure you found that too, where the imposter syndrome goes away once you're just in the thick of it and you're building it and you're making it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think the last remark on that note is, if you're in Guelph and you're like wanting to start something and we could help in any way or facilitate anything, like reach out to us. Like Friends of Friends is a perfect example. It was like, Georgia, yeah, go for it. We'll see what we can do, and we'll help you as much as we can. And it's been a great success. So we're always happy to give somebody a shot with some exciting new off the wall thing they want to try, and we're happy to be a part of it. So
awesome. Well, I can't think of a better way to end it than right there. So thanks so much for letting me into this space and talking about your journey here, Colton.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a great chat.
Thanks for listening to Growing Guelph. I've been your host, Jordan Sloggett. Be sure to subscribe to us on social media, on your favorite podcast app, and if you have a recommendation for a future guest you'd like me to speak to, you can reach out to me at growingguelph@gmail.com.